I never thought I'd become the kind of woman who keeps secrets this heavy, but here I am. Secrets that wake me up at night, that sit with me in the quiet, that stare at me every time I look in the mirror. You know, they say betrayal always comes from someone close, but they never talk about what happens when you're the one doing the betraying. When you cross a line you swore you never would. When it's not some stranger who stole your peace, but your own choices. I wasn't looking for anything. Honestly, I wasn't. I wasn't out to ruin anything. I wasn't out to chase some fantasy. I was just tired. Tired of being invisible. My days started to feel like background noise, like I was a ghost floating through my own life. People saw me, yes, but they didn't really see me. Not my husband. Not my daughter. No one. Until he did. And I hate how true that feels. I hate how that one moment, the way he looked at me, the way he spoke to me, made something shift inside me. He wasn't supposed to notice me. I was supposed to be just the mother-in-law. The older woman who helped with dishes. The one who babysat when they were busy. But that's not how it went. And I wish I could tell you that I stopped it right then. That I stepped away. That I did the right thing. But the truth is messy. It doesn't come with a clean bow. It comes with confusion, silence, guilt. So I'm here now telling the story I never thought I'd tell. Not to make excuses. Not to justify what happened. But because maybe, just maybe, there's someone out there who needs to hear it. Maybe you're carrying something heavy too. Maybe you've stood in a moment where your heart pulled you somewhere your mind knew you shouldn't go. If that's you, you're not alone. And if it's not, then I hope you'll listen anyway, because behind every mistake is a story. And this one almost destroyed everything I love. So grab a cup of tea, or coffee, or whatever helps you feel grounded, because I'm about to tell you how it all started. The looks, the touches, the moment I forgot who I was, and the day I almost lost my daughter for good. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, where we share the stories most people are too afraid to tell. And trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. I'm 58 years old. I was widowed young. My first husband passed away suddenly when I was 33. A car accident. One of those things that changes your entire life in a moment. For a long time after that, I didn't think I'd ever feel anything again. But eventually, I remarried. A quiet man, kind, dependable, but emotionally distant. Over time, we became more like roommates than husband and wife. We shared a bed, but not a life. I learned to smile through the loneliness. Learned to keep busy. Learned to say, I'm fine even when I felt like I was slowly disappearing. People always said I was strong. Resilient. The kind of woman who holds everyone else together. But the truth is, no one ever asked how I was doing. Not really. Then there's my daughter, my only child. She's smart, driven, full of fire. She got married young, to a man everyone seemed to adore. He was charming, generous, always offering to help with things around the house. Fixing the leaky sink. Carrying in groceries. Always the first to say, you sit down, I've got this. He made everyone feel comfortable. He made me feel seen. That's where the problem began. He and my daughter would visit often. They'd spend weekends at our house, especially after they moved into that tiny apartment across town. She'd be on her laptop, catching up on work, while he'd be in the kitchen helping me with dishes or talking about sports with my husband. At first, I thought it was sweet, how eager he was to help, how easy he was to talk to. He'd joke with me, tell me I didn't look old enough to be anyone's mother-in-law. I laughed it off. But the way he looked at me? It didn't feel like a joke. He'd find small reasons to linger. A hand brushing mine when passing a plate. A glance that held a little too long. The way he'd ask me questions about my day, my past, my favorite music, as if he genuinely wanted to know. As if I mattered. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt noticed. Not in a loud, obvious way. It was subtle, gentle, like a slow drip of something warm into a life that had grown cold. I told myself it was harmless. that I was imagining it, that I was just flattered because no one had looked at me that way in years. But deep down, something had shifted, and once I felt that shift, I couldn't unfeel it. My house, this quiet, suburban home filled with beige walls and safe routines, suddenly felt different when he was in it. The air felt thicker, my skin more aware, my heart more restless. And I hated that. But I also craved it. That's the part one don't like admitting. That I wanted to be seen. That I needed something I hadn't even realized was missing. So I did what I always did. I kept smiling. I kept pretending. I kept playing the role everyone expected me to play. But inside, something had started to stir. And I didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. It was a Sunday evening. We had just finished dinner, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans. The kind of meal I've made 100 times. The kind that fills the house with comfort. With familiarity. My daughter had her laptop at the table again. She always brought it with her. Work never seemed to end for her. Halfway through dessert, her phone buzzed. She looked down, sighed, and said she had to head back to the office. A client emergency. I nodded, understanding. That's how she is, responsible to a fault. She kissed her husband on the cheek, gave me a quick hug, and left in a rush, promising to be back before bedtime. Just like that, she was gone. It was just the two of us left in the kitchen. He stood up, stretched, and smiled at me. "Let me help you clean up." I told him it wasn't necessary, that he should go relax in the living room. But he insisted, so we stood at the sink together, scraping plates, rinsing dishes. The sound of running water filled the silence between us. And then, out of nowhere, he said it. "You know, you really don't look old enough to have a grown daughter." I laughed. That light, dismissive laugh women learn to use when they don't know what else to do with a compliment that feels loaded. But inside, something tightened. I looked over at him. He wasn't smiling like he usually does when he jokes. He was looking right at me, like he meant it. I didn't know what to say. So I kept scrubbing, kept my eyes on the sink, told myself it was harmless. Just words. But my hands were shaking. We finished the dishes. He said goodnight, gave me that same warm smile he always does. And then he went upstairs to the guest room. I stood in the kitchen for a long time after he left. The lights were still on. The room smelled like dish soap and lemon pie. The house was quiet. But I could still feel his eyes on me. That night, I got into bed next to my husband. He was already asleep, his back turned, soft snores rising and falling with every breath. And for the first time in years, I couldn't sleep. Not because of guilt. Not yet. But because something had awakened in me. Something I thought was long gone. It wasn't about him, not really. It was about me. The part of me that had been buried under years of responsibility. The part of me that still wanted to be seen as beautiful, desirable, alive. I told myself I was being silly, that I was overthinking it, that he was just being kind. But the way he looked at me, it didn't feel like kindness. And deep down, I knew this wasn't the end of it. It was the beginning. He stopped seeing me a long time ago. My husband, I mean. I don't know when it happened exactly. Maybe it was gradual. Like fog settling in so slowly, you don't realize you've lost the view until you're surrounded by gray. Until the warmth is gone and all that's left is silence and routine. He used to notice things, my favorite perfume, the way I'd hum when I cooked, the way I'd wear my hair differently on Sundays. But over time, the noticing stopped. And I got tired of trying to make him look again. Eventually, I just faded into the background of his life. I'd talk, and he'd nod without looking up from his phone. I'd walk into a room, and he'd barely glance in my direction. Our conversations became exchanges of logistics. Groceries, bills, appointments. I stopped expecting affection. Stopped reaching for his hand. Stopped waiting for, "You look beautiful today." Because I knew it wasn't coming. But he noticed. My son-in-law. He noticed the little things. He asked how my day was and actually waited for the answer. He noticed when I changed my hair. He said it looked soft. He asked if I was wearing a new dress. I was. It was one I'd pulled from the back of my closet, the kind I used to wear before I stopped caring. And that's when I started dressing differently. At first, I told myself it was just for me, that I was trying to feel like myself again. But it wasn't just for me, and I knew that. Even if I wasn't ready to admit it, I started wearing a little lipstick, a hint of perfume, nothing too obvious, nothing anyone else would notice, but enough to make me feel different when I walked past him, when I leaned over to pour him a cup of tea, when he smiled and thanked me like I mattered. And somewhere in the quiet of those small interactions, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just about attention. It was about feeling alive again, feeling present, desired. And then came the shame, because the more I leaned into that feeling, the more I started to hide things. Tiny things at first. A text he sent about a funny video deleted. A compliment he whispered while passing behind me ignored, but not forgotten. A moment at the dinner table when our knees brushed and neither of us moved away. I started hiding things I shouldn't have needed to hide, because I knew the lines were beginning to blur. I told myself it was harmless, that nothing had happened. But in my heart, I knew better. Because emotional affairs don't start with a kiss. They start with a thought you don't push away. A feeling you entertain a little too long. A look that lingers. And then one afternoon, it happened. We were reaching for the same dish in the cabinet. Our hands touched. Just that. Just skin brushing skin. But something passed between us. Something quiet. Something electric. And I didn't pull away. I should have. But I didn't. After that touch, something changed. We didn't talk about it. Of course we didn't. But we both felt it. That quiet awareness whenever we were alone. That extra beat in the silence. That subtle shift from polite to personal. It didn't take much. Just more moments. My daughter started working longer hours. Weekend calls. Business trips. She always asked if I could help with dinner or watch the dog while she was gone. And of course, I said yes. So he and I were left together more often. Fixing the broken faucet in the laundry room. Sharing morning coffee while the sun poured into the kitchen. Small talk, followed by longer pauses. Deeper exchanges. Things you don't usually say out loud. He started telling me things. About the tension in their marriage. How she's always stressed. Distant. Short-tempered. How he sometimes feels like a failure in her eyes, like nothing he does is good enough. And I listened. Too closely. Because I understood. I really did. That feeling of giving and still coming up short. That ache of feeling invisible in your own home. One afternoon, he sat across from me at the table. The room was quiet, just the hum of the fridge and the faint ticking of the wall clock. He was holding his coffee mug with both hands, staring into it like he was afraid of what he might say. Then he looked at me, right at me, and said, "Sometimes I feel more connected to you than to her." I didn't know how to respond. My stomach turned. My hands trembled beneath the table. But I didn't tell him he was wrong. I didn't tell him to stop. Because the truth is, I felt it too. That connection. That strange, dangerous closeness. Like we were two people who'd been overlooked by the people closest to us, and somehow found each other in the quiet spaces between. The conversations kept happening. I started to notice everything. The way his eyes softened when I spoke. The way he leaned in a little too far when I laughed. The way my heart jumped when I heard the front door open and it was him walking in. One day, I noticed something on his shoulder. A bit of lint or something, I don't even remember. I reached out to brush it off. My fingers grazed his shirt. And he didn't move. Our faces were close. Closer than they should have been. I felt his breath. He smelled like soap and cedar. And for a split second, I forgot every rule I'd ever lived by. I pulled away first. But it was too late. The air had changed. We had crossed another invisible line. The worst part? It didn't feel wrong in that moment. It felt familiar, comfortable, and that terrified me, because comfort can be the most dangerous thing of all. It makes you forget to protect yourself. One afternoon, my daughter was away on a work trip. He came over to return something. A book she left at our house. That's all it was supposed to be. He stood in the doorway, holding it, smiling. And I invited him in without thinking twice. We sat in the living room, talked about nothing, talked about everything, and when I got up to grab something from the kitchen, I noticed something. He didn't leave. It was a Saturday afternoon. My daughter had flown out for a work conference, 3 days, maybe 4. She asked if he could stay with us for the weekend since their apartment was getting some maintenance work done. I didn't think twice when I said yes. I should've. The day started like any other. I made breakfast, eggs, toast, coffee. We sat at the kitchen table. He told me about a dream he had, something silly, something about being chased by chickens. I laughed too hard. I laughed like someone who forgot how dangerous it is to feel good around the wrong person. Later, he offered to help me sort through some old boxes in the attic. I'd been meaning to for months. Boxes filled with photos, clothes, holiday decorations. I said sure. It felt innocent enough. But it wasn't. The attic was warm and dusty. Narrow beams of sunlight slipped through the wooden slats, catching tiny specks of dust in the air. We moved slowly, stepping over scattered boxes, lifting, stacking, opening things that hadn't been touched in years. It was quiet up there. Too quiet. I pulled out an old photo album. My daughter at age 6. Her front teeth missing, hair in pigtails. He sat beside me on the floor, leaned in close to look. Our arms touched. Neither of us moved. I turned the page. A photo of me. Young, carefree, standing in the sun. He stared at it longer than he should have. "You look beautiful," he said softly. It wasn't the first time he'd said something like that. But it was the first time he said it like that. I looked at him. Really looked. He was inches away. I don't know who moved first. All I know is, it happened. A kiss. Not frantic. Not wild. Just slow. Intentional. Quiet. But it carried years of unmet need. Of words unsaid. Of glances held too long. And the second it ended, the weight of it crashed down on me. I pulled away. Too quickly. Too suddenly. He blinked, stunned. I could see the guilt rise in his face like a tide he couldn't stop. I stood up. My knees shook. My chest ached. My hands trembled as I reached for the nearest box, pretending to be busy. Pretending everything hadn't just changed. He didn't say a word. Neither did I. The attic felt smaller. Tighter. The air too still. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't look at myself. I walked down the stairs first. He followed a few minutes later. We didn't speak the rest of the day. Every room in the house felt heavy with silence. And I kept replaying it in my mind. Over and over again. Why didn't I stop it? Why didn't I say something before it happened? Why didn't I run? Because for one brief, awful moment, I didn't want to. And that's what I hated most. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a betrayal. Of my daughter. Of my husband. Of the life I'd spent decades building. And no matter how small it looked on the outside, it shattered something on the inside. I knew it couldn't happen again. I told myself it wouldn't. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it. That night, I laid in bed staring at the ceiling. My husband slept soundly beside me, as he always did. I could still feel the warmth of that attic air. The press of his lips. The sound of my heart pounding in my ears. I closed my eyes and prayed for it to disappear. But it didn't. And it wouldn't. Because once you cross a line like that, you don't go back to who you were before. There's a crack now. And no matter how small it starts, it only grows. This was the moment everything shifted. And what happened after? What happened next? You wouldn't believe me if I told you. But I will. Because if you've ever been close to the edge, if you've ever crossed a line and wished you hadn't, you'll understand. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold for the story's turning point. This isn't over. The next morning, we didn't speak. He came down late, eyes on his phone, barely mumbled a good morning. I poured my coffee in silence, too aware of every movement, every glance, every breath between us. We were strangers again. But not the kind you meet in passing. The kind who shared something they weren't supposed to. And now can't unshare it. Every word felt heavy. Every silence louder than it should have been. We didn't mention the attic. We didn't mention the kiss. But it hovered between us like a fog, thick and inescapable. When my daughter returned that evening, she walked in all smiles, holding takeout, chatting about her trip. He kissed her on the cheek. And I stood in the doorway watching, feeling like I was crumbling from the inside out. I tried to act normal. Tried to pretend nothing had changed. Tried to focus on folding napkins, setting the table, pouring drinks. But my hands were shaking. He sat next to her at dinner. She reached for his hand while telling a story. He laughed at her jokes. And I just watched. Every smile between them pierced me. Every laugh made me feel smaller, sicker. I told myself I deserved to feel it. I told myself this was my punishment. But even that didn't make the nausea go away. The worst part was how easily everything could have looked fine from the outside. No one would have guessed what had happened, what I had allowed. But I knew. He knew. And eventually, she would know. Over the next few days, he avoided me, barely made eye contact, slipped out of rooms the second I entered, kept his distance like I was something he didn't want to touch again. And I told myself that was good. That maybe we were both trying to forget it happened. Maybe we could move on. Erase the mistake. But it never works like that. Because guilt doesn't fade with time. It festers in silence. One night, after everyone had gone to bed, I was in the kitchen, rinsing a mug, trying to keep my mind busy. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the fridge and the ticking of that damn clock on the wall. Then my phone buzzed. A message. From him. 2 words. Can we talk? I stared at the screen like it was on fire. My heart pounded in my chest. My throat closed up. And in that moment, I realized something. I thought it was over. But it was just beginning. I didn't respond to his message right away. I sat there, holding my phone, staring at the words like they held some kind of answer. But all I felt was weight. Like the guilt had settled into my bones. I went to bed that night without replying. But sleep didn't come. Instead, I laid there in the dark, listening to my husband breathe beside me, steady, unbothered, unaware. And I thought about everything. About who I had become. About the line I'd crossed. About the way I couldn't take any of it back. Was I lonely? Yes. But was I justified? Absolutely not. I betrayed my daughter. I betrayed my marriage. But worst of all, I betrayed myself. That's the part no one really talks about, how deeply you can disappoint your own soul. How you can look at yourself and feel like a stranger. Like someone you don't recognize. Someone you don't even like. The next morning, I looked in the mirror. Really looked. And I didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes were tired. Her mouth was drawn tight. She looked like she'd been carrying something she wasn't meant to carry. Because she was. And still, part of me, this awful, broken part, still wanted him to reach out again. Still wondered what he'd say. Still wondered if he felt what I felt. Was it real? Was it just confusion? Was it attention? Or worse, was it manipulation? I didn't know anymore. And that scared me. Because when your mind starts twisting guilt into longing, you lose track of the truth. You start rewriting what happened. Softening the edges. Making excuses. I sat down at the dining table that night and started writing. Not to him, but to her. My daughter. I poured everything into that letter. Every thought, every tear, every admission I didn't want to say out loud. I told her how sorry I was, how ashamed, how I let something hollow convince me it was real. I wrote until my hand cramped and my chest ached, and when I finished, I folded the paper, slipped it into an envelope, and placed it in the drawer beside my bed, because I couldn't give it to her. Not yet, maybe not ever, because saying the truth out loud would destroy her. And maybe that was the only line I hadn't crossed. Not because I was strong, but because I was afraid. Afraid that once the truth left my lips, there'd be no version of her that would ever look at me the same. And I couldn't bear that. So I kept the letter hidden. Like the rest of it. Like him. Like me. Have you ever done something you swore you'd never do? Not something careless. Not something reckless. Something that came from somewhere deep. Quiet. Lonely. Something that started as a whisper inside you and ended up roaring through your entire life? Because I did. And I live with it every single day. It's easy to say what you wouldn't do, until you're standing in front of a choice that no longer looks so black and white. Until your heart is aching for something you don't even have words for. Would you confess? Or would you carry it to the grave? I still don't know what's braver. I wonder what you would have done. I wonder if you've ever loved someone you weren't supposed to, or let someone love you in a way that crossed every line you once said you'd never touch. I'm not here to be forgiven. And I'm not asking for sympathy. But maybe you felt it too. That hunger for connection. That ache to be seen. Sometimes emotional needs blur moral lines. Sometimes we choose the wrong thing, just to feel something real. If any part of this touched something in you, if you've ever stood in a moment that changed you, tell me. Tell us. Share your thoughts in the comments. Even if it's just a single word. You never know who might need to see it. And if you want more stories like this, real stories, raw and unfiltered, subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. We speak the things most people are too afraid to say. Because sometimes, silence carries the heaviest weight of all. We think we know what we're capable of, until we don't. We think we're safe. That we're immune. That we're strong enough to walk to the edge and never fall. But it only takes one wrong moment. One moment when your guard is down. When your heart is wide open and your mind is too tired to argue. One moment, and your whole life shifts. I never told my daughter. I never gave her the letter. And yes, we're still married. The days roll on. The sun still rises. Birthdays are still celebrated. Life continues. But I lost something I'll never get back. Myself. The version of me who could look her in the eyes without flinching. The version of me who thought certain things were impossible. That woman, she's gone. I'm not proud of my story, but maybe someone needed to hear it. Maybe someone standing at the edge right now needs to hear one voice whisper, don't take the next step. Because once you do, you won't be able to go back. So be careful where your heart wanders. You may not find your way back.